Welcome to episode 6 of CRDA's Resources for Resiliency series. My guest today is Tushar Chikhliker, an attorney, an economic development attorney with Nexsen Pruet. Tushar runs the economic development practice for Nexsen Pruet across the state of South Carolina and is experienced in a variety of economic development projects. Has worked with companies all over the world on bringing their jobs and capital investment to South Carolina. He's also got a few other tricks up his sleeve, which we'll get to in the course of the comments. But Tushar, if you would, please comment on the state of economic development activity. We'd seen a roller coaster for the last couple of years in South Carolina, FDI implications and so on. And then now we've seen something none of us have seen before for the last couple of months. So take us through the big picture and then the current picture, and then we'll get into future stuff later on.
Sure. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, everybody. Pre-COVID-19, of course, there were a number of challenges that we were facing, primarily on the tariff and trade side. And it wasn't so much that there were, the rules and regulations were particularly challenging, even though they were, but what I was most hearing was that the uncertainty and the changes with those rules and regulations made it very difficult to plan. So Mike, what we saw in the last couple of years were projects that were ready to move, were ready to announce, that were well capitalized and larger, were able to move forward. But it was the middle to smaller size projects, particularly the ones from Asia and parts of Europe, that were affected by the tariff and trade regulations that really slowed down. The projects haven't died, fortunately, but they did slow down. And we were hoping that they would reignite. And then COVID-19 came. So that's presented us with an entirely different set of challenges. The pipeline is strong. The visiting is actually strong virtually. Lots of desktop audits are being done. But as you know, Mike, there's really no substitute for a physical visit. For somebody flying over, particularly on the FDI side, and seeing a site, meeting governmental officials firsthand, there's really no substitute for that. So I think what we have to do is we have to try and do as much of that blocking and tackling on the front end now, such that when the pandemic passes, and hopefully it passes very soon, that we're ready to close deals instead of initially start negotiations.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Tushar. And we've been using the expression of CRDA. Today and tomorrow might not be looking real good, but the day after tomorrow is going to come, and we need to be ready. You and I have talked previously about two of the initiatives CRDA has undertaken, one in life sciences, one is relocating of supply chains, onshoring, regionalizing, lots of different names for that. So from your perspective, what do you think when we're post-COVID and the world is relatively normal, or the new abnormal, as Mark Cuban says, what do you think is going to be out there for South Carolina and for Charleston, to the extent you can comment on that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I would say coming out of the pandemic, regionalism is going to be more important than ever. And I think one of the great things is the Tri-County area really pulling its resources together, of which there are many, some in sites, some in people, some in ideas, and some in many other areas that will be attractive to communities. What I am seeing is that the likely uptick really during the tail end of COVID-19, but also as things move forward into the future, are in pharmaceuticals. A number of my pharmaceutical companies have ramped up production, have ramped up trying to stabilize in large part, a domestic supply chain. Onshoring is a concept that we're hearing a lot about right now, and I think inevitably and invariably there will be a fair amount of that as domestic companies try and shore that up. However, I do think that there will be challenges with that, and I do think that we should not assume that there's going to be a complete exodus back into the US of that kind of supply chain. I think the companies that are going to be most successful are the ones that can diversify both domestically and overseas to hedge that risk. And the low country of South Carolina, the Tri-County area, is very well poised to receive the benefit of that particular onshoring effort. Also, beyond that, I think with knowledge economy jobs, tech companies are really growing at a fast pace. They were anyway, but I think that's increased even more dramatically since COVID-19. And so, recruiting and retaining that kind of talent in the Tri-County area is going to be of immense importance. I also think with all of us, you and me both, as we sit here today, are working from home. I think what we need to be also looking for are some of these knowledge economy type jobs, or perhaps service and office jobs that are, even in some cases, tied to manufacturing companies, but where working from home has become a lot more customary. A lot of these individuals, whether it's a finance department or an IT company, might want to relocate to a place where they can live and have a fantastic quality of life, but have a lower cost of living while still doing their jobs. And that's an opportunity that the CRDA region certainly provides companies.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Tushar. One of the things, we're going to launch a talent recruiting campaign for exactly that kind of worker you talked about. And I'm glad you brought up the knowledge economy, because that brings me to our last topic. I said early on that you wear several hats. One of them is that you chair the legislative committee for the South Carolina Economic Developers Association, better known as SCEDA. And one of the things is South Carolina is extraordinarily competitive when it comes to manufacturing projects. But talk to us about how competitive we are for knowledge economy projects and what you see that could make us more competitive in the future.
Great question, Mike. I think when we're focusing on knowledge economy jobs, we love manufacturing in South Carolina. It's what our state was built off of and will continue to be built off of. And that's a very high-tech industry in and of itself, and very much a knowledge economy industry in and of itself. But there are other arenas that we as a state, as we're trying to evolve our economy, should be and can be focusing on. And in serving as SCEDA legislative chair for, I guess, 3 of the last 4 years, one of the things that, in working with all the great minds that make up SCEDA, including yours and others at CRDA, is we're trying to figure out how to refine our toolkit, which admittedly has been made historically and developed historically for manufacturers, how to refine that toolkit to specifically recruit these sorts of knowledge economy type companies. And there are a number of ideas that we're presently kicking around within the organization. But those, and it can be things from leveraging our existing manufacturing relationships to try and recruit back office, IT and other functions for those manufacturing companies. But then there's also creating and establishing a set of incentives that is narrowly tailored and focused on these industries, whichever industry it may be. And I think there's an education level and an advocacy piece that we need to complete to really make those effective to help land companies here in South Carolina.
Tushar, thank you very much. We appreciate your insight. We enjoy working with you. We enjoy working with your colleagues at Nexsen Pruet. Thanks for participating in CRDA's Resources for Resiliency series. And as we come out of this and we have both traditional manufacturing projects to work, and well as some newer knowledge economy type projects, I'm sure our paths will be crossing, and we look forward to that. So thank you again for your participation today.